Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world today, and welcome to our forum, The Role of Growth Hubs, a Global Perspective. I am very excited to be joined today by a number of thought leaders and business leaders from around the world who will introduce themselves shortly. But first of all, my name is Gamu Matirira. I am the founder and CEO of Gen A Consultancy based in the UK. And basically, we work with international businesses that are interested in expansion into Sub-Saharan Africa through strategic partnerships, and vice versa with local leaders in Africa with their local initiatives. So this particular panel is going to be really interesting in terms of looking at how different growth hubs and the SMEs that they nurture can work together cross-border. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to ask you to all introduce yourselves, and I'm going to just go in order of who's on my screen. So Zahir, would you like to go first, please?
Thank you, Gamu. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Zahir Nasser, and I am the managing partner and co-founder of a company called Docturi Connect in Abu Dhabi. It's a health technology company, and I've been an entrepreneur in the health tech space for the past 3 or 4 years. I also work with a number of startups through another company of mine called Let's Rise, which is a education, a mentoring coaching platform for entrepreneurs and startups, primarily in this region, but we plan to expand outside very shortly. I'm also the one of the UAE directors for the Founder Institute, a Silicon Valley-based incubator program, and have been working with growth hubs and initiatives for startups and small businesses in this region and others for many, many years. So I hope I can offer a diverse perspective and learn from you all. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. No, looking forward to hearing your perspective. Thank you. Jumane, welcome. Good morning. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Morning, how are you? And sorry, I had a technical glitch with Zoom. It was updating.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, so my name is Jumane. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sahara Ventures. We are based primarily in Dar es Salaam. We have a startup accelerator where we focus on accelerating growth stage businesses and matchmake them with prospective investors. But also we have a marketplace, it's called Sahara Sparks, where we do a lot of events related to innovation, tech, and entrepreneurship. And yes, we do a lot of consulting work also around innovation and tech. And I'm very excited to be here and share my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Great to have you here. Serge, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you. I'm Timba Serge. I'm co-founder and CEO at Lipa Labs. So Lipa Labs is our research labs and innovation labs based in Kigali, Rwanda. And we do mainly 3 services. One is talent development programs, where we focus on deep tech trainings to enable young people here increase their competence in deep technologies. Second, it's research and development, where we focus on making sure that they are able to develop projects that can really enable innovation in the country here or innovate around existing products. And we have business development, where we help the young people to turn their projects into products. So those are mainly 3 services that we do here. Yeah.
Amazing. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Simunza, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Happy to. My name is Simunza Miangana. I'm Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Bongo Hive in Lusaka, Zambia. We work with startup founders, SME owners through various stages of their life cycle of their business and as they're growing. So at ideation, when they're seeking to validate products or ideas that they have before they get into the market or commit themselves to enter in market, then we have a goal. We've also designed go-to-market programs that support them in the end stages of them now acquiring customers and growing, and then setting their teams forth towards a mission that they've set, and then investor readiness, where we can accelerate them to as they're in the process of growth, but also matchmake them with investors and partners. We also have a co-working space that they can work from that offers affordable space for them to work from. Then we also work with corporates offering innovation and digital transformation services. Part of that is corporates themselves are seeking to develop products, digital products and digital services to get into the market. But they're also trying to partner with startups and in the process of seeking to partner with startups, we can work with them and hopefully get matches to happen there. The third thing that I'm going to add is coming back to the entrepreneurs that we work with is we're currently raising a fund to invest in early stage startups because we've seen an opportunity to accelerate that growth in Southern Africa. Yeah.
Amazing. Fantastic. How exciting. Thank you for joining us, Simonza. Dumisani, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Gamu. So my name is Dumisani Dube. I am the co-founder and also the engagement and design lead at Parama Innovation Center, which is based out of Zimbabwe in a city called Bulawayo, a fairly new establishment. And our focus really is primarily on technical skills development. And upon us supporting the pathway to the digital skills development, we connect the young people to jobs and also connect them to a pathway of entrepreneurship depending on their area of interest. And another area of focus that we have is the design lab, where a lot of our focus is on research in identifying solutions for challenges we would have identified across different sectors in the economy, and how technology can be an enabler in having relevant solutions to those challenges. And the sectors we primarily focus on is agriculture, renewable energy, education, and the healthcare. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Dumi. Thanks for joining us. And last but certainly not least, Alex, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi there. Yes, good morning. Thanks very much for inviting me to be part of this. Very excited. My name is Alex Cotchell. I am the manager of the Growth Hub based at the University of Gloucestershire in the UK. We are one of 38 growth hubs across England that have been set up to simplify the business support landscape for growing SMEs. I work with a team of 13 people made up of business consultants. We support businesses from sort of pre-start, early stage, right up to standard SME definition 249, that sort of stuff. Obviously, being part of a university, we have direct access for businesses to students, to research. We have a very big drive on enterprise. And we're quite unique in England insofar as within Gloucestershire, where we're based, we're the only growth hub model that actually has 6 within the area. So I have 5 growth hub manager counterparts across the county, and as I say, we're part of 38. We are really here to help drive productivity, create jobs, support enterprise, support innovation. In the UK at the moment, obviously export internationalization is huge on our agenda, along with sort of net zero, sustainability. And so we're really looking thematically at those sorts of areas and really trying to just remove any of the barriers that are stopping businesses growing.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today, Alex. Brilliant. So I'm just going to set the scene before we go into a presentation delivered by Serge today. So innovation and growth hubs across the globe bring together the best of public and private sector partnerships to promote, coordinate, and deliver business support based on local needs. There's never been such an opportunity for startup businesses to collaborate and grow internationally. Across Sub-Saharan Africa, a network of growth hubs is established and to stimulate, support, and grow startup businesses. The UK has an established growth hub network also, run by local enterprise partnerships, and across the globe, programs exist to grow innovative technologies from grassroots businesses. We bring together some of those involved to explore collaborative innovation among startups and innovators focused on today's challenges, creating opportunity and stimulus across boundaries. So to set the scene, Serge, a co-founder of Lipa Labs, Rwanda, is going to give us a brief presentation on their 4Ds model, the process that Lipa Labs follows to develop products into profitable, scalable, and sustainable businesses. Serge, go ahead.
Thank you, Gamu. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
So I'm going to tell you about 4Ds metrics. So how did we come with this? Define, design, develop, and deploy is a process, an approach developed from a story that I'm going to tell you. If you can see the video coming, globally 90% of startups fail, and 10% of them fail within the first year. And we were able to connect enough dots, and that's how we came up with for these metrics. So which is define, design, develop, and deploy, that represents a process of developing a desirable and feasible products to a profitable, and at the end, we need to have a profitable and scalable and sustainable businesses. So for these metrics is made of define, design, develop, and deploy. And if we combine them respectively, we are able to develop viable businesses together. So to go deeper, I'm going to show you how this process helps young innovators to develop viable businesses. We have been seeing a very huge challenge in these areas where you find young innovators, like they wake up in the morning and dream about something, and immediately they start developing a solution. You ask yourself, how are they going to know this solution is needed? So you have heard of different approaches, applying design thinking, where you have to first know what the customer needs, and you empathize and make sure that you're gonna have understand the customer needs. So we have used these kind of different approaches and combined different techniques to come up with these 4Ds. And from define stage, we need to understand the customer needs so that we can find possible solutions while considering the entire solution space. And when we have the customer needs known, we need to have a detailed design of the proposed solution and shaping the product's desirability and feasibility. So doing that, we keep in mind that we have to test at each stage. And when we reach at develop stage, we make sure that we develop a product that serves the needs and ensuring viability and sustainability of the business. So, and considering its impact on the environment. So I will pass through different topics that are covered under each stage. So on the deployment stage, we make sure that we package the minimum viable product and also validating it, making sure that we test also the go-to-market strategy, where to start, which markets to start with, and who to keep in contact, so that we make sure that we are able to prepare the scaling. So on each stage, we have a couple of topics that are covered. And on define stage, we start with defining the assumptions. There is what we call business model hypothesis. So everyone has a dream, like you dream about something, you need to do something, but those are assumptions. So can you write down the assumptions in a clear way that are understandable? And are you able to map it? Can you use business model canvas or in canvas to map your assumptions? And can you check your team to see if you have a good team that can work together with you to validate the assumptions? So from there, from the assumptions part, then you need to go to market research and make sure that you validate whether the assumptions you have are really correct. If you are thinking that the customer needs this, then if you go to market research, then you're going to validate that, it's true, the market needs this. So we have to carry out the market research and collect the customer needs. From there, and you have to develop the concept, the solution concept. So on solution concept, we also make sure that the innovators are going to consider the entire solution space. Because having many solutions, then you can have a better solution. So on the next stage, we have design. So on the design, because we have the solution concept, we need now to have a better understanding on how this solution is going to be developed. So you need to design different categories of required designs. So we have like the customer experience cycle map. So it's more of like customer journey to know what journey my customer is going to pass through while consuming the product. You need to know the revenue model you want to develop. So you have to design that. You have to do the competition analysis. You have to go deeper, like benchmark and know what the customers, the competition is doing, so that you can better design how your solution is going to be different. So after having that much information and activities done on the customer journey design and revenue model design and competition analysis, then you need to start designing what your prototype, the solution prototype, can look like. And here, you consider that it's going to be innovative, it's going to be competitive, it's going to have some innovations that are going to compete, are going to be, your unique advantages over the competition. So if there is any designs that are unique and you want to register for intellectual property, whether it's a copyright or any patent, intellectual property, utility, whatever, you need to also know how to register this. So you go deeper into also product specifications on this level. You do the trade-off techniques and know the tools and technologies you use while on the design stage, preparing to develop your product. So here you also look into the product or service development process. You go into product or service development economics, and here is to make sure that my product, the product I'm going to deliver, is going to be affordable. So during the market research on the design stage, you have research about how much your customers are going to afford. So on the develop stage, it's where you're going to do some numbers and figure out if this product is going to be affordable to the customers. You remember on the design stage, you have worked on the specifications and you have considered trade-offs where necessary. But on the develop stage, then you having much more data to consider while deciding whether this product is going to be affordable or not. So you develop your prototype, you test it couple of times, you do iterations on this stage, and at the end, you package it if you find it's been validated by the customers who tested. And on the deploy stage, we make sure that we have all the validation reports. We do validations on 3 areas. We do validation on customer desirability if the customers are desiring this product. We do validation on technical feasibility if the product is really working and is serving the problems or the needs. And we do validation also on the viability if the product is scalable, if the market can afford to buy it, and if it can really scale. So we develop different business documents, starting with the business plan, because you're looking much into how you're gonna do business. Now you are talking about business. You're gonna do pitch deck because you need investors to invest in your product or business. So there's a lot of documents here you develop. There are people, there are startups who start with business plan before they even do market research. You know that. Or they don't have a product, but they have started with the business plan. So we have really done some innovations here so that every topic here should be in a place where it has to be. So one can be prerequisite of the other. So, and then later you look on partnerships, investment readiness, you look at anything, the due diligence, you need to be having ready to for investment. So this is how then the 4Ds metrics is covered just on 4 stages. So we do also have an automated platform that helps an individual or startup or company to organize their product and use an intelligent wizard to rapidly and efficiently guide them on filling the obtained gaps. So this is not yet out, but on the website, on our website, you will see that you can subscribe and wait for the release of this platform. So this will be a game changer because it will help startups to, do incubation themselves. The individuals, you can, if you have an idea, you can start from define up to deploy, like by yourself. Whenever you need the help, then you can seek for a facilitator to facilitate, but the rest of the job you can do it by yourself. So we have used this, our approach has been tested by different organizations. We started in Lipa Labs, we incubated startups, and we have good testimonies of startups here incubated using our approach. And we have got to work with some other organizations here in Rwanda, and you can see some others, European organizations. And the Earth University, we have a fellow who is using our approach, like incubating their project. So we're seeing that it really has a tremendous impact, and we really need to reduce the other rate. 90% of startups fail globally, and this is really a very big number, and we need to see how we can reduce the failure rate so that people can in advance discover that they can fail so that they know what to change before they fail. So that's it. I urge everyone to subscribe for these metrics, waiting for the release of the automated platform so that we can develop our successful businesses together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, though. That was brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, we've got everybody back on the screen. Thank you so much. That was a really good, deep understanding of your model and how you're working in Rwanda. Before we move forward, were there any questions from anyone on the panel? Everybody okay? Okay. Great. Okay, so what we'd like to explore first is why are growth hubs such an integral part of the economy, and why are growth hubs seen as a powerful avenue for inclusive growth? Who would like to open that one up for us today? Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I suppose I'm happy to kick off. I guess as far as sort of the England UK agenda is concerned, growth hubs were set up very specifically in response to a very significant piece of work that was done to look at productivity and why productivity wasn't where it should be in the country. And one of the things that they found, and this was for startups, but it was also for established SMEs, is that the business support helpline was so complicated, or the business support landscape, sorry, was so complicated that it was almost just people were overfaced and they didn't know where to start. And I'd say that the key role for growth hubs in the UK is literally to act as that sort of single front door for businesses. So it's, I mean, it will be the same for everybody, won't it? But, even thinking about startups, now we're seeing so much entrepreneurial activity coming through, but from non-traditional individuals. So, we're seeing people at every life stage kind of coming through and looking to start up businesses as a result of being made redundant or kind of, career changes and all that sort of stuff. And I think, if there is an awful amount of support available, but not everybody's particularly tech savvy, not everyone's a digi-nomad, because I think business support in general now, it's very difficult to categorize it into age groups or business life stage or what a manager looks like or what a leader looks like. I think that one of the key roles for growth hubs, certainly from our perspective, is just to make sure that regardless of who you are, where you are, what you are, how competent you are, if you come to a growth hub, we're the people that will signpost you in the right direction. So an awful lot of what we do at triage level is signposting. And I think especially over the last couple of years with COVID and all of the kind of impacts that businesses have really, really faced, I think growth hubs have been more important than ever to sort of be that kind of, look, all you need to know is to go to your growth hub, we'll take care of the rest. Life has been stressful enough, hasn't it, for everybody? So I'd say that is the role. But I think, and I like obviously the reference to joining the dots, because I also think that's what growth hubs do. We're big connectors. It's our job to know everybody and to be able to connect businesses or ideas with, whether it's students or universities or the private sector. So an awful lot of what we tend to do is just put the right people together, and that's kind of when the magic happens. But I think having a single front door or a kind of a go-to where all sorts of organizations, people, individuals, regardless of their background or their educational qualifications or their business experience, somewhere that they can go where they know that they'll get the answers that they need. I think that's probably at the heart of everything that we do.
Yeah. Simunza, would you share the same sentiment from a Zambian perspective?
I do agree. The only addition I'd make to, Alex speaks very well towards our capability of growth hubs to be able to provide capacity building, to be able to make connections, which was also, very clearly stated in Serge's presentation. And then access to capital is something that comes through. Is if you see the potential for growth, is okay, great. How do you, can you connect them to, can you create good founders, good idea, good company, even if they're an experiment, towards this to capital that allows them to accelerate that growth towards the markets that they validate and hopefully have a revenue that comes through towards this sustainability. What I would also add to that would be, in the case of a lot of us that are in Africa, is where you would ideally hope that some business models are already set in stone and have been figured out with regards to that. And that depends on where you are as well. So we'd hope that if you know how to build a bakery in the UK, in Rwanda, you should be able to follow a similar business model for a bakery in Zambia. But we find ourselves in a place where we're putting up a lot of the infrastructure that you take for granted in the United Kingdom. And so taking advantage of digital plays and allowing people to say, I'll talk about financial services, for example, where banking has been the staple within the United Kingdom or the Western world for years, and branches are everywhere. The cost of setting up a branch in rural areas of Africa is very, very expensive, and the return on investment is what institutions fear to get out. But that doesn't stop us from thinking about how do we actually provide banking services to people. And so using digital platforms, startups have been able to now start using agency models, using digital platforms to start designing new models that extend their reach towards areas where traditional institutions would not go. So whilst there's some risk in that, there's a great opportunity in that. There's an amazing opportunity in that as well. So we find that that's where we're playing in support. We also find ourselves playing in supporting, and I love Sergio's thing of helping them to discover and define what a good service is and what a good value proposition is. So that, and then the partnerships then come in to then extend those services.
Fantastic. Jumane, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, so I think also on the top of what has been shared, I think another important role, especially in Africa, that the Growth Hub is playing is being at the core of the ecosystem. So basically, if you go to matured market, whether it's in the UK or US or even in the Nordic region, you find universities are playing a very crucial role in supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. They're the core of it all. So they work with research agencies, they work with private sector, they support policies and regulation. They inform everything that is happening in the ecosystem, tech transfer, research commercialization. But most of this responsibility in Africa right now, whether you like it or not, they're being done by growth hubs, because that is the only place where you can go to design policies around startups. That's the only place you can go to look for product design and tech transfer and commercialization, like what Sergio was sharing. that is also a place where you can go and, let's say, if you're a development partner and you're looking to support the ecosystem, create employment opportunities for youth, it's an easy landing space for you. So you came to realize the role of innovation hubs in Africa has evolved, and over time it has become even more complex and complicated because they work with all these hubs partners, but as well as ecosystem partners to support the innovation ecosystem in the continent. So it's an exciting time, but it's also a very heavy responsibility, which means we need also to build these other institutions and other pillars of the innovation ecosystem so that we can be able to have a reciprocated impact to our grassroots communities.
Wow. Yeah, that is a massive, massive responsibility. Zahir, from a UAE standpoint.
Yeah, I definitely share the sentiment of all the other panelists.
Yeah.
You know, the growth hubs or you know, entrepreneurial centers, we don't really call them growth hubs in this region, but you know, accelerators, incubators, entrepreneurial centers play an integral role because ultimately, you know, any change that needs to happen needs to start at the grassroots. You know, we need, as individuals, need to want to see that change in order to convince government, to convince ministries to allow that change to happen. And here in particular, we see the government entities, the ministries who want to see changes. They also see the need for innovation and need for transformation. So they actually contract the growth hubs to deliver this education and programs. I'm part of the Ministry of Health and Prevention. I went through a program with them, and then after that, we were supporting them in mentoring, you know, future startups. We were giving them, you know, one-to-one sessions to guide them and show them what they can potentially do. And nobody's going to change government regulation, and especially in health and ministry, you know, regulation overnight. In my own startup, you know, it's a very slow process, evidence-based. We have to show that the evidence is there to justify the change. You know, having sandboxes through these entrepreneurial hubs definitely make it a lot easier and make it accessible to everybody. You know, most people go back 15, 20 years would not even think they could have an impact on somewhere like health, for example. But now with the, you know, prevalence of these kind of centers, everybody can have an impact. So it's integral.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you touched on something really important there. Part of the government support for startup businesses is developing this network of growth hubs. You know, but what does that look like? That definitely looks different in every country, doesn't it? So, you know, we've just heard here that in Africa, the growth hubs actually bear most of the responsibility, if not all, for developing these SMEs and startups. So where does the government fit into this model? Serge, do you want to kickstart that one?
Thank you. I can see the government involvement in the growth hubs involvement. Let me give an example here in Rwanda. When I completed my high school, yes, we were learning entrepreneurship, but what you learn from school and what you see outside is a bit different. So there is the first hub here in Kigali called K-Lab. It's the first one that we had in Kigali, Rwanda. And when I completed my high school, I joined that hub. And from there, that's my first time I had a word ideation. So at high school, I couldn't know that. So, and that's where my entrepreneurship journey started. And later, let's say at this time, we have a lot of hubs in Kigali, and in myself, I do have one, the Lipa Labs. And still government comes in because the K-Lab was firstly initiated by government in partnership with ICT Chamber, the Rwanda ICT Chamber. And let me say about now, now also government is coming in to see how they can embed the growth hubs or these innovation hubs in learning institutions, universities or colleges. So that's something that private sector cannot, take decision about. Sometimes there is policy or government initiatives that it becomes like a key driver to some of the developments. So right now, Lipa Labs was contracted to develop the concept note for the country's colleges, like these are 3 years university level schools, technical schools. So we are developing a concept note on how we can embed innovation labs in universities so that students can not only learn about technical whatever skills, but also can know how to turn their skills into products and viable business. So we're doing that, but also you can understand that it's government initiative that is behind the initiative.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Alex, I know that, well, I don't know. I think you're the best person to explain the government role from a UK standpoint when it comes to, supporting growth hubs.
Yeah, so so taking, for example, the Gloucester Growth Hub, which is part of the Gloucestershire Growth Hub network, we were first established in 2014, and it was actually through a partnership between the University of Gloucestershire and G1st LEP, which is our county's local enterprise partnership. So the LEP framework, which runs throughout England. Effectively, we work directly with a government department called BEIS, which is the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So we're in a really, really fortunate position, all the English growth hubs, if you like, because we work hand in hand with government effectively. So we always have this we refer to it as this kind of single source of truth in terms of what's coming down, which is why growth hubs were so important throughout COVID, throughout the pandemic. Growth hubs were used to manage and sort of disseminate grants for sort of business recovery and things like that. So there is a central theme and a central red thread that runs through all of the growth hubs in the country, insofar as that kind of BEIS government support. But then what also happens is each of the growth hubs, certainly within Gloucestershire, we all have partner institutions. So for example, the Gloucester one, it's the University of Gloucestershire and the LEP. Our colleagues in Cirencester, it's the Royal Agricultural University and the LEP. We work with a college in LEP for Stroud, but then in another part of the county, we work with a private enterprise where they've got a growth hub. So we do very much try to get that private sector, public sector balance within the county. So that gives a sort of a richness to the offer. We're going through an interesting time at the moment in terms of where we are in the UK and funding. Our growth hub in certainly the Gloucester operation has been EU funded for the last 6 years. So we're on ESA funding at the minute, which finishes this year at the end of December. So we're obviously looking at other kind of financial sustainability models, but we do consider ourselves very fortunate because we had a sort of an independent evaluation done recently where we are monitored by government in terms of our impacts. So they look at things like GVA contribution, they look at job creation, all that sort of stuff. So whilst, we are funded and we have been very successful in our funding, with that come many, many outputs, many responsibilities in terms of metrics that we have to hit, which thankfully we're doing. But I think what's been really, really good for us, and it's picking up on a point that was made earlier about the whole digitization of a growth hub offer, or businesses understanding digital sort of development, is for a fair while, because of the way that we were funded, we had a very specific sort of delivery mechanism and the way we had to sort of measure engagement. COVID came along, everything went out the window. So overnight we had to digitize ourselves, so if we looked at ourselves as a business, we had to take our digital delivery online. And actually, even now we're sort of returning to whatever new normal looks like, we've realized that this blended offer of business support is absolutely the way forward, because it did open up our offer to people that otherwise would not have engaged with us. So we as businesses, we've learned an awful lot of lessons in the way we go, and looking at our own sort of sustainability strategy from 23 onwards, we're looking at innovation, we're having to be, entrepreneurs, all that sort of stuff as well. So we're very, very fortunate in that we're completely supported and backed by government. In the same way, we're also kind of, we're given enough flexibility and freedom to really, to match our markets. The UK is a really, really small place, but even just within England, we've got such differences, in terms of the regional economies. You look at Gloucestershire as one point, then you look at sort of, Northumberland and some of those areas up in the northeast, completely different business profile, completely different sort of, thematic challenges. So our structure, I think, is probably far more structured, like you say, when it comes to the relationship with government than maybe elsewhere. But that also brings with it its own challenges too.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for that. What does it look like in Tanzania, Jumani, in terms of government support?
Yeah, so first of all, as surprising as might be, I think the Tanzanian government really did a very good job back in the early days of the ecosystem, because the first innovation hub in Tanzania, one of the earliest one was government owned, which of course I started my career there, Buni Innovation Hub. It was owned by the Commission for Science and Technology Tanzania in a bilateral project between Tanzanian government and the Finnish government. And the idea was to build a knowledge society in Tanzania, promoting innovation ecosystem, urban innovation ecosystem, and subnational innovation ecosystems. They started what they call living labs in rural Tanzania. They are very different from the living labs in Europe. And they started tech spaces in urban area. One of them was Buni Innovation Hub. And so government did a pretty good work in the beginning of the ecosystem, starting the innovation hubs, and these innovation hubs eventually, through partnership with the likes of the World Bank, they went ahead and formed business incubators. But now their law has to change a bit, because there are so many privately owned innovation spaces, accelerators and incubators in Dar es Salaam. Some have been established by the local champs, and some have been established by international organizations like SeedSpace and others. So right now we are seeing a different role that is supposed to be played by the government, and this is primarily around policy makings and regulations around growth hubs, and ideally is through the services and opportunities we are creating to the businesses that we support and the young people we support. Most of our clients are startups, people who are running new businesses without any proven business model, operating in tested market. Potentially they have a chance to grow exponentially. And this can be very confusing to a born before computer policymaker, because to them it's very difficult to understand these new forms of businesses, because they are used of traditional SMEs. They know if you can buy oranges here and sell here, but they don't understand you need to burn $1 million USD before you generate your first revenue. So what happens now, government is playing a different role, which is more of trying to work with other local ecosystem players, like Tanzania Startup Association, which is like an umbrella organization that works with the government to address issues around policies and regulations for startups. They also work with the ICT Commission, which is also an entity under the government, which looks into things like digital economy frameworks around ICT sandbox policies, and how banks can interact with startups, and how different government agencies can also open up their data so that startup can have access. For example, right now there's a huge push and discussion around access to the national ID card data, which is a very crucial data because it provides specific identification of people in the ecosystem, and startup need those data for obvious reasons. So basically the role of government has evolved from the creators of these growth hubs and financiers of these growth hubs to building other pillars around the growth hubs. But also through the Commission for Science and Technology Tanzania, they have made the hubs where I started my career, Buni Innovation Hub and Dar es Salaam Technology Business Incubator, to be like case studies or learning place for other hubs on how labs are being run and how they operate, but also for policymakers who don't understand those hubs to come and visit to understand how they work so that they can better create policies and regulations. But also in terms of their direct engagement, I know they've been financing on-campus innovation hubs. They've been financing on-campus innovation hubs in public universities. I know some universities like University of Dar es Salaam and some other universities have received a grant from the government to support on-campus innovation program, which including growth hub within the campus. So those are some of the things that I know the government is doing. There's more that needs to be done, but I believe through strategic partnerships and through working with other members of the ecosystem, it can be done. But to be honest, there's a huge influence of support that is coming from the development sector more than the government right now. Which,
if you don't mind, if we just stick to the current sort of government support, if we just look at that, because we're going to, our next question is going to be delving deeper into what are the gaps that we find that are existing, and we can go a bit deeper into that in a moment, because I just wanted to compare that to the UAE, Zimbabwe, and Zambia in terms of government, the role that government is actually playing. So Zahir, do you want to just quickly step in, and then we'll come back to the gaps that exist?
No, that's a very good question. So if you put it that way, it's a completely different ballgame. So the level of support that growth hubs in Europe are getting from the government is very different from hubs in Africa. And I'll be very honest. You have sometimes subsidies, you have some cities actually supporting the hubs themselves. But you don't see those kind of services in Africa. It's very difficult to say you'll be given money to cover your utility cost or to subsidize your cost of operation. I'll be thankful if they do that to me. So we have to hustle ourselves to build these institutions from the scratch. The government role is basically, if I can say, the secondary layer, setting up the environment, but you have to figure your own way out, and that's a fact on what is happening right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jumane. Zahir, what would your take be from your side of the world?
Yeah, from the UAE, we're really seeing government drive the change. They're driving the initiatives to enable transformation, enabling startups to thrive, enabling even existing businesses and corporates to think about entrepreneurship and how they should be transforming the way they do things. So we're seeing a big shift from an old model in this region would be, let's throw some money at the problem and see how we can fix it. And they're not doing that. They're actually seeing how can they actually set up these entrepreneurial centers, how can they provide the support services around it, and they're bringing in the government entities that can support everything that's needed. So, for example, if you're a venture capital fund that wants to set up in the UAE, they will provide you with the support to do that. They'll match some of your funding. If you've raised up to $5 million from limited partners, they will actually match up to part of that to actually give you additional funding to support the local ecosystem. And there's so many initiatives. I mean, it would take me the entire phone call, so I'm gonna cut myself short here. But I think we're seeing it's still a very new ecosystem. We're only 4 or 5 years old when we look at the kind of support that we've been receiving from government and that drive. And I think, watch this space, because you're going to see a lot coming out of this region. And not only for this region, but they're doing a lot to support other regions. So it's definitely a source of inspiration.
Yeah, brilliant. Sounds really well supported. From a Zimbabwean standpoint, how do you feel about government's role in supporting growth hubs? Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gamu. And I think mainly from what has been mentioned in Tanzania, and I think also part in Zambia, is similar to what's happening in Zimbabwe. So maybe possibly just to start off with, in some of the practical efforts have been a lot around your tertiary institutions, so a lot around your universities. So a lot of the state-owned universities, if not all, have actually been supported to ensure that they establish, growth hubs within there. And but then from how we've seen it play out, the focus has been primarily one-sided around access to talent. And so they've been looking at saying, how do you then grow the necessary talent to drive the the innovation that the country requires. And there hasn't been a lot of support when it comes now to what your startups would require. So for example, when we're now talking about access to finance or access to capital, there hasn't been any significant moves around there where we can see the gap actively involved. Yes, to a certain extent, there has been initiatives, by say the Ministry of ICT to try and promote some level of access to capital, but that has not been really broadly accessible. And the other area, which of course is important, has been access to markets. To say, as new innovations or startups that are being incubated or supported within these innovation centers or growth hubs, to what extent are they scaling and tapping into the broader markets with possibly even support from the government itself, and that we've not significantly seen. So really, I think in summary, we are still at a very nascent level, and the focus has been a lot more of saying it should be driven by your academic institutions, and those collaborations between the academia and private sector have not really matured to level we would really desire to see the growth within the ecosystem. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's where I could say we are as a country.
Interesting. And last but not least, Zambia. I know there's a lot of movement in Zambia at the moment. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Simonza?
Right. So a few years ago, I was with colleagues fellow ecosystem builders from across the continent in Kigali, and we were pretty envious of the support that they get from their government, similar to South Africa as well. Fortunately, I think we're beginning to see a turn from our government. So coming from a place where I think part of the challenge was that government didn't understand, and no matter how hard we tried to explain it, government just didn't understand what we were trying to do. It's because then, I think in the early stages, they thought we were youth centers, where youth could then just come in and hopefully behave themselves and get jobs afterwards. And we're like, no, we're actually helping people build businesses. And we realized very, very early on, especially being the first digital innovation hub in the country, we realized very on that we'd have to chart our course and not rely on government, but keep conversation polite enough that if we ever needed to talk to one another, we could. But last year, Zambia saw a change in political leadership. The new government is very commerce focused, with an ambition to see new enterprises come into the market, and is beginning to get a grasp of part of that ambition being high growth ventures, and how do you get new high growth ventures coming out and supporting them in the emerging state of them being startups before they can see them, and also understanding that it's possibly a long play. So conversations recently have been around the establishment of a startup act to address gaps in the policy that may not have previously addressed the needs of startups, especially given what the difference is between a startup and an SME, because generally, given the SME policy, they would think that covers every company that is starting, and we're like, no, but startups are a whole different thing. Then they're very open now to also trying to create an environment in the country. So we're part of a technology working group that is having conversations with government around creating an environment that also allows startups from other countries, founders from other countries that want to come and establish startups from Zambia and use Zambia as a point for growth going out to be able to do that. And part of that has been around, if you look at the financial sector over the last 2 years, the regulators, who are the central bank and the Securities and Exchange Commission, have been very, very welcoming of initiatives that have that lend themselves towards new services and new products that come into the market and hopefully can expand. So things that they have done is we work together with them through a program that we called FinTech for You. We work with them towards putting together a regulatory playbook that allows new founders to understand ahead of time what the boxes they need to take, the information they need to be able to provide, and before they get into the journey of starting a business in the financial sector. Also, both regulators last year launched sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes that allow them to experiment with new products and services, but in close proximity of the regulator, so that if there's especially if they're starting a product that that current regulation does not provide guidelines or rails around them to help them understand what can and can't be done. And traditionally the regulator would say, listen, we don't understand what you're doing, so stop. But this time the regulator is saying, let's have a look at what you're doing. Let's make sure that you that all the safety checks are in place. Let's give you 2 years, and then if we get a better understanding of it, we can then draft regulation for the next players that are coming in to do a similar thing, which I think is very open. And we're finding that founders from outside of Zambia are now also looking at coming into Zambia to take advantage of that. The government is also now open to conversation, and we will be having a conference. We'll be announcing a conference soon to invite people around to come in and have a close conversation with the government to understand what should be in place and what's the long play and where the opportunities everywhere from environment that allows them to ideate, environment that allows them to grow, but also around what venture capital should look like, so that capital is accessible within the reach of good people developing good ideas.
Fantastic. I mean, this is a perfect segue to start to explore what the main challenges therefore are that you experience in running a growth hub. And if we just talk about what are the biggest needs and those of the businesses you incubate, because I understand there's 2 layers here, yourselves as a growth hub and how you operate within this environment as key ecosystem players, but also the fact that you're responsible for all these businesses you're incubating through you. So what are the main challenges that you actually experience? Alex, do you want to kick us off from a UK perspective?
Yeah, I think, and I would imagine this will be universal across everybody. I think from an incubation point of view, and not even incubation, I think from kind of, established SMEs, that the biggest challenge that we see businesses facing is funding. That's going back to a point that a colleague made earlier, that tends to be one of those areas, and we are not a growth hub with a checkbook. So whilst we have a sister project called Start and Grow, which is specifically for early stage businesses, they have vouchers they can give out, sort of £1,000 here and there, but we don't have cash. We can kind of signpost people to funding sources. Other than that, I'd say the challenges that we as a growth hub face, being really honest about it, and it's just quite timely, is sort of our own sustainability. Just because, going back to the point that we are so fortunate that we're completely backed by government. But obviously here in the UK, we're going through some changes. Obviously we had Brexit, so obviously EU funding, is all changing to sort of UK shared prosperity. So I think our immediate challenge, certainly from my point of view, is sort of trying to work out what happens beyond 2022. The great thing is that there are options, and we are very fortunate that our local LEP and also our university, are very keen to make that happen. But I think we probably will have to redefine ourselves a little bit, which I actually see as a fantastic opportunity rather than a challenge. But there are just some kind of hurdles that we have to jump over to get to that. Right. In terms of the key sort of things we see coming through from businesses, I think a lot of the time is just the fact that people don't know what they don't know, which sounds really, really simple and really basic, but I think it is just, we offer a completely fully funded service for businesses from sort of pre-start all the way through to kind of £50 million turnover. Between the 2 projects that we run at the university, a business can access I'm going to say like almost 24 hours worth of free consultancy advice, loads and loads of things, but there's still quite a large segment of the market that we're just not engaging with. Yeah. So, you know, we have our own challenges as well, reaching out to sort of underrepresented groups, sort of harder to reach areas. So I'd say from a growth hub point of view, in terms of us doing what we're here to do, is just making sure that we're actually getting out to the parts of the business community that really need us most, especially when it comes to things like enterprise and innovation. One of the challenges that we may find is that because we are based in a business school at a university, that automatically acts as a barrier to some people who may have a sort of a prejudgment that, you know, they're not clever enough, or when the reverse is true. But so that I would say that's probably our biggest challenge in terms of making sure that we are making ourselves available to people who might not consider themselves a business person. And also a lot of the time there is a cultural thing here where, especially with students, if they're considering going into a freelance role or they're looking at kind of working for themselves, they don't consider that business. So there's quite a language sort of terminology issue in the UK as well about how we communicate. So I'd say cash, which is always going to be, I think, no matter where you are in the world, that's what businesses need. Making sure that we're available and reaching out to sort of marginalised groups or underrepresented groups, and just making sure that we're not alienating, not intentionally, but just that we're using the wrong language, or we're not talking to people in a language that they understand in terms of sort of some of the more, you know, traditional academia, businessy kind of words.
Yeah, no, great, thank you. Serge, what does it look like from a Rwanda perspective? What are the biggest challenges there?
Yeah, one, I would say most of the hubs you find they don't have a structured way, approach contents they follow, and the way of assessing the level of startups they are recruiting, or the enrollment of innovators, which leads to, I can say, like an informed output. Because when you don't have a clear image of the gaps that a startup has and what you need to provide them for them to reach at the level they need, at that time you kind of running the incubation blindly. So not having the contents, the structured way that you help the startups, it becomes a very big challenge, but we're solving that. Yeah. There is also lack of trained facilitators. You find anyone who has, let's say, developed a business, or who has worked for 10 years in a certain institution will come in a hub and say, he's a mentor. He's a mentor, he can facilitate, he can, you know, but it's really that true, because these people can have different experiences, and that experience can be depending on the environment where they were living or operating from. So I don't think everyone's experience can fit in young innovators' needs they have. So that's why I think facilitators and incubators need to be trained, you know, so that they are able to assess what are the needs that the innovator has, and what should I provide them to fill the gaps. The third one, I would say, it's access to finance. Access to finance is also a very big challenge, but for me, I look at in two perspectives. One, sometimes there is this lack of network of investors. Maybe we are not connected to investors. The investors don't know that there is good solutions and good innovators here. That can be one. Second, it can be because maybe there is nothing to attract the investors. So, so then when I look at that from my point of view, sometimes I find that, yes, there is good innovators and good solutions and good market for that these solutions are targeting. but maybe there is that lack of network with investors. There's no connections. That one is there. I know is there. But also there is the other one that there is a lot of innovators who needs money, who needs investment, but they don't have products to attract those investors. So those two challenges are there on the side of access to finance, but we're trying to find ways we fill the gap. We make sure that we build good connections and networks of investors, but also we make sure that our innovators, our startups have products that are able to attract the finance. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. I mean, a lot of what's being said here is quite universal. Are there any other challenges that haven't been mentioned so far that you're finding from your own contexts?
Yeah, I could add to that. I think the journey of hubs across Africa, I think some of the points that have been raised are definitely very real. Sustainability that has already been raised is definitely an issue across the continent. Ideal scenario being that ideally you would have raised a fund and then start out your program after that because you've got the money to invest and the money to sustain yourselves going on. But then a number of us have also benefited from being able to have some funding that allows us to then operate and then try to build the blocks, but at the same time, try to also build the ecosystem. So beyond ourselves, extend ourselves towards the ecosystem to be able to do that. However, we do what we can with what we have. It's helping people become better mentors and creating programs, not only to work with the founders themselves, but also to teach business people and professionals how to be valuable mentors in a sense like that. But when it comes back to sustainability, one of the things is, so for example, we are 85 to 90% self-sustaining through activities that we run, and largely that engage corporations and provide services towards corporations, because the startup founders themselves cannot afford the services that we provide. So the business model for actually running a hub, you find, is that you're engaging a beneficiary who's not really your customer, because then you have to go and find somebody who can actually pay for the services that you're then going to extend towards the founders. But then now that we're engaging corporations and working with corporations, the temptation then becomes, if they're providing 80% of your revenue, how much time can you now provide towards the startups that you actually started with? Because now you've got a customer that is now, it becomes more and more demanding, because they now start to value your services and they're willing to pay for your services as you do product development with them and all that kind of stuff. So it's a play there, and we've been trying to figure out what that we're trying to figure out what that model is, and still stay true to our mission, which we believe we will always do. But also find the financing so that we can keep that focused and unadulterated in our approach to what is to not only being sustainable, but definitely driving for change and growth.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting challenge right there, and it makes me think about Serge's presentation about the product that they're going to release, whereby startups can actually start to formulate their ideas on an automated platform, and then that kind of takes, it allows them to do that whilst you're spending time on other things, and when they get to a certain point, you can then bring them into the fold with all the other activities. Really interesting. Jimmy, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it was just on expanding on one of the points, particularly around the access to finance or access to capital point, and just the unique environment that we operate in Zimbabwe, because of, the economic environment in our country is such that it's quite difficult to also attract international investors. And part of the prerequisites, of course, is if a startup is looking at raising capital, from partners abroad, is possibly they also incorporate in the UK or in the US, just to de-risk, the part of the investor. And this is not quite an easy process if you were to look at just your average startup in Zimbabwe. And so it also then creates this constraint to say we then have brilliant startups, brilliant solutions, and possibly even scalable. But then locally, there has not been enough capital being injected into these startups. And so I think for us, that gap to then say, even from a policy angle, are there ways to ensure that you create a more inclusive environment for our startups to be able to then begin to attract international investment or VCs from global VCs. So I think that's one of the major gaps I just wanted to expand on that we face in Zim, particularly on the angle of access to finance.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Thank you. That's absolutely valid. Jumane, was there anything else that hasn't been mentioned that you see coming through as a challenge from Tanzania, from the Tanzania landscape?
No, really. I think my colleagues have exhausted most of the challenge. We actually face a lot of them. And I think one more thing also, based on what has been said already, I think the other thing is also the way the whole growth hub thing started in Africa. It started with a very wrong approach. It started from an angle of someone has to come in and finance you to start it. That's how it started, back in the days when Google and Indigo Trust and the likes of Hivos, when they were funding hubs across the continent, there was no very clear strategy what happened when the funding stops. And this is where the problem started. So most of the hubs, after the funding stopped, they had to figure a way out to sustain themselves. And some of the quickest revenue stream was to try to collect fees from the community or to try to see if the government can sponsor them in some of the activity they do, partnership with corporates. But because we didn't have the foundation on leveraging value to other members of the ecosystem, it was very difficult to exchange whatever value we provided to actual cash. But if you look at the ecosystem right now, there's so many people who need the services that hubs are providing. But because of the challenge that we currently face, we don't have strong internal teams. We don't have competent individuals to offer some of these services, whether it's consulting services to corporate or stuff like that. It makes it very difficult to find those sustainability model. But I believe the next phase of growth hubs in Africa, we will move towards having components that are actually targeting to support young entrepreneurs and innovators, like some sort of a community service, but at the same time having this wing that specifically deals with consulting services and offering professional services to subsidize the costs. Because for the time being, I'm not seeing anyone will be able to support the hubs in time. Otherwise, most of them will cross-shop.
Great, great, interesting perspective right there. So Zahir, where you have a government that is actually willing to fund match, I'm interested to hear what kind of challenges therefore there are from a UAE standpoint.
Yeah, I think obviously, even though we have government funding, access to funding for startups is still an issue here, and we are having to seek external investors. But the ecosystem has been designed in a way where foreign investors are comfortable investing, and most startup consultants, hubs tend to still follow international best practices of setting up like your holding company in Delaware or in London. But we've also created within the local ecosystem favorable conditions. For example, there's an SPV structure within the Abu Dhabi global market, which follows English common law. So it's the ecosystem's also being built in a way to attract foreign investors to appreciate the local system. But in terms of challenges, I think one of the biggest challenges I see is we have more demand than we have capacity to supply. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur here in the region. and the government can't create enough enough opportunities and supply of space, of programs fast enough. You know, we're seeing almost a backlog of people. So we're then seeing, you know, the influx of international hubs and programs that are coming to support those. But there is a backlog. So I'd say that's the biggest challenge here right now.
Okay. Wow, a really good spectrum. I mean, let's talk about your own sort of personal experience and focuses within your growth hubs. So what kind of initiatives are you hoping to achieve through collaboration? What are you currently working on, that whether it's an international collaboration you're looking for or much more strong local collaborations that you're looking for? What sort of things are going on? Yeah, go ahead, Zahir.
I can continue, if you like. We're definitely looking at how we can be involved in the ecosystem more actively, because it's government driven. We have to not tiptoe around, but we have to be respectful of what they're trying to create and be supportive of it and complementary at the same time. So we're looking at how we can actually bring in other solution providers from outside and other partnerships to support the ecosystem, yet, you know, try and maintain the status quo of how the ecosystem is being run. And you know, the good thing is, you know, that the opportunity to play is there for anybody who wants to come and be part of the ecosystem. So we've just got to, you know, play that facilitative role. An educated role where we're just respecting the local culture, we're respecting the local ecosystem, and being supportive of it at the same time.
Great. Serge, from Rwanda, what sort of initiatives are you sort of working on that are seeking collaboration?
Yeah, of course, as I presented, the 4Ds matrix is a tool that seeks collaboration on a global level, not only Rwanda or Africa, because we need to engage everyone in making sure that we're using an approach that is proven, and also making sure that we challenge each other, different angles of the world. So that we are able to provide good mentorship that the startups needs. So we can achieve this if we have a global network of these hubs, so that if someone is in Rwanda and needs is using 4Ds metrics on his startups, and he needs a facilitator from USA or from England, so he can get a facilitator from there. So there's no need of just saying I'm at Lipa Labs and I can only get a facilitator from Lipa Labs. So the 4Ds metrics to allow everyone to get facilitated from anywhere. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that. Dumi, what's your take?
Sure. I think our focus, and as I highlighted earlier on, we are still fairly new in the market, but you know, we have really been driving the issue of you know, building the right skills in the market. And I think from a collaboration point of view, the issue of then connecting with experts and mentors from a global perspective is important for us. And this particularly also speaks to one of the areas we have to say, as we are supporting our entrepreneurs, you know, we don't box them within a single market. So they should really be looking at scaling across the region, because that's the only way, or the, you know, one of the biggest way they can sustain their innovations. Because Zimbabwe on its own, it's a fairly small country. And so for us to ensure that we are starting them off from a perspective where they are seeing that potential to scale across the region, be you know, the Southern Africa region, you know, it's key. And for us to be able to do this, you know, connecting with the right experts, you know, globally, to unlock that understanding at a very early stage is important for us. So really, that's really one of the key focus areas we have.
Noted. Jumane, Tanzania.
Yeah, so collaboration is at the core of what Sahara is doing, and is actually part of our mission, because our mission is to build the innovation ecosystem in Africa through strategic collaboration with all other ecosystem players, whether it's academia, development partner, public agencies, research institutions. We all see them as strategic partners toward achieving our mission. So some of the initiatives that we're actually doing right now with other specific pillars of the ecosystem. If I start with the government, we are playing a very important role, advisor role. We are involved in the designing of the National Innovation Sandbox. We are also working with the Commission to design the National Innovation Framework for Tanzania and review of the Tanzania Science and Technology and Innovation Policy, which we feel is very, very important for our voice to be heard. Otherwise, it will be another dead document for another 20 years, affecting everything that we do. So that's one role we are playing, and we do this, to be honest, at a volunteering basis. We just request to be in those chairs and advise and provide our opinions. And also, we work very closely with university. Part of our CSI, our corporate social investment, is to create new founders in Tanzania. So we have launched something called Startup School with University of Dar es Salaam, where we just take some of the most young, successful founders in Dar es Salaam to the campus to share their lesson learned with the students, just to inspire them and create that sparks of them at least having an idea of having entrepreneurship as part of their career option. The goal is not to create the next unicorn or whatever, but it's just to instill that culture of entrepreneurship where these founders can share about what it takes to be a founder, how do they handle their daily operation, how do they get to put together their teams, how do they access partnership and stuff like that. But also in terms of other partnerships that we are running into the ecosystem, we are also piloting collaboration with universities at the level of tech transfer and research commercialization. As you already know, in this part of the world, people don't pay much attention towards intangible assets and patents and trademarks. And there's a lot of research work that is being done, but it's ending up being shelved. So what we are doing right now through projects like, there's a project called the Lipa project we are doing with University of Rome, is to try to see how some of these researches can be actually transformed into products, and also helping the local researchers to understand things like trademarking and patenting, and also help them establish this entrepreneurial culture by partnering with other entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. So what we looking into the ecosystem right now is to work with these different pillars of the ecosystem and putting ourselves at the core of it, as well as also generating lessons. So we do a lot of publications, and we do share a lot of knowledge, because we believe all these lessons, they are very, very important for the overall growth of our ecosystem, for new growth hubs, for new players who are coming into the ecosystem, so that they don't repeat similar mistakes we did in the past few years.
Fantastic, fantastic. Simonza, what about Zambia?
Oh yeah, so there are a couple of things that I will definitely point out very, very quickly. Is first and foremost to say, anybody listening to this call that is looking at accelerating the capacity building of digital skills in the region, starting off with Southern Africa, I would definitely get in touch with Dumisani. We've previously partnered with him, and he's on other programs, and he's amazing in his insight and his understanding of running programs across Southern Africa in various countries that allows for that to happen. And through him, we were able to then also deliver programs across about 5-6 countries in Southern Africa as well, through the partnership that we had with him. So I'll definitely say he's a great person to have a conversation with. So now, building on top of that is definitely with regards to collaboration, we've set up the Southern Africa Venture Partnership, which seeks to foster collaboration between hubs in Southern Africa. Definitely the points that Dumi makes around Southern African countries having markets Zambia is about 19 million people. Zimbabwe is about 13. Malawi, just about 19 as well. So we, in context, we're small countries, but we definitely know that we have an impact with regards to great education, great people, they're hardworking, and we've got the resources to build amazing stuff. So we are looking at we're working cross-country. So the Southern Africa Venture Partnership is a vehicle that we're definitely looking towards setting up hubs across Southern Africa that can collaborate to make it easy for founders and startups to expand into each other's territories, but to also get the support of hubs, and also mentors and everything else within the region that we're making. Second thing, like I mentioned, we are raising a fund. So any person who's looking at investing in high growth startups that deliver amazing products and services towards the mass market in Southern Africa, we're definitely interested in having a conversation with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Timunza. Alex, thanks for being so patient. You're on mute, by the way. So yes, what's your take from your perspective?
I think in terms of collaborations, we've got a couple of things going on really. I think if anyone is listening from Gloucestershire and is one of our delivery partners, big shout out from me. One of the ways that we're able to support as many businesses as we are is that we work with, I think it's just over 40 individual businesses and organisations that actually give their time free to run workshops and training and skills to help us kind of engage with those businesses. So we have that. Obviously, as part of the network, each growth hub within the county has a partner institution. So obviously for myself, it's the University of Gloucestershire. We have local councils, we have colleges, we also have private sector. So those are some really kind of good funnels in for other collaborations and partnerships. We do knowledge transfer with the university as well, obviously. So we tap in a lot to the academic side. And then on a more national level, because we're affiliated with our local enterprise partnership, the Growth Hub network in England works very closely together. So, you know, there is regular sort of regional context and sharing. There are national institutions like Enterprise Nation, who we all sort of plug into. And then on top of that, we are developing and working with the rest of sort of business schools across the country in delivering the Help to Grow Management Programme, which is the latest kind of government-led initiative that's being channeled through business schools in the UK. So we couldn't do what we do without amazing collaboration with businesses, and, you know, especially, and I know Jill's on the back of this call somewhere and she's one of them, you know, the delivery partners that help us really reach out to businesses, because there's simply no way that we can know all the stuff we need to know to help every business that we can. On an international level, and I'm not an expert on it, so I apologise, but the University of Gloucestershire, I think, does run a Growth Hub partner project in Indonesia. So there is some, you know, Malaysia, there is some interesting collaboration going across that on an international context. But we have collaboration sort of all different shapes and sizes, from a kind of local, regional, national, and then obviously an international basis as well. And I would also say, if anybody is watching and they would like to become a delivery partner and work with us, then please feel free to get in contact with me. But also I think this is just such a fantastic forum as well for us to kind of learn from each other. So I can see some really good opportunities to continue conversations, obviously, with my sort of panel colleagues here, because that's, you know, we're all up against the same thing. We're all trying to find innovative ways to be sustainable, and this is absolutely priceless. Yeah. So a bit more collaboration coming from this angle as well, I think.
Fantastic and perfectly timed. You know, I know there was so much more we could have talked about today, but you can already see just the richness of, you know, the few questions that we posed here, but how much there is in terms of just peeling off the layers and understanding from so many different contexts. It's been such an amazing conversation. So thank you everybody on the call for all your contributions, for making the time to join us today, and for sharing. This is the first time we've run the International Role of Growth Hubs panel, but I definitely can see that this conversation, you know, we need to take it further. So I genuinely will be pulling together some of the key things that have been talked about. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So I'm excited to see what else we can, you know, discover as we continue this conversation, you know, moving forward. So thank you all for joining us today. And and I look forward to further collaborations with each of you, actually. This is going to be brilliant.